Trains are supposed to be permanent. They are built from steel, designed to last half a century, engineered to survive mountains, deserts, and winters that freeze rivers solid. They run through wars, through economic collapses, through political transitions. They outlive the people who designed them. And yet, all over the world, there are locomotives that were simply left behind, not scrapped, not preserved, not memorialized, just abandoned. Entire railways swallowed by forests, luxury high-speed trains rusting in open fields, steam engines marooned in salt deserts, freight cars frozen into Arctic tundra. Machines that once carried nations forward now sit in silence. Today, we are not just looking at forgotten trains. We are uncovering the real reason infrastructure gets abandoned and what it reveals about human ambition, miscalculation, and the limits of control. We will move from massive industrial graveyards to political disasters, to railways that defied geography itself. And by the end, you will notice something unsettling. None of these trains were abandoned by accident. In the Bolivian highlands just outside Uyuni, more than 100 locomotives sit in the open desert. They were imported from Britain in the late 19th and early 20th centuries to power Bolivia's booming mining industry. At the time, railways were symbols of modernity. If you had rail, you had growth. If you had growth, you had power. The plan was ambitious. Expand the rail network, move minerals efficiently, connect remote regions, modernize the country. Hundreds of locomotives were shipped across oceans, iron giants assembled under a high-altitude sun. For a while, the system worked. Silver and tin moved, money flowed, confidence grew. But commodity prices fluctuate, political alliances fracture, infrastructure requires maintenance. When mining profits declined and political disputes slowed expansion, the economics collapsed. Repairs became expensive, parts became scarce, revenue no longer justified investment. And the trains? They were rolled aside and left in the desert winds. No ceremony, no official declaration of failure, just quiet abandonment. The salt-heavy air corrodes metal faster than almost anywhere on Earth. Bolts disintegrate, steel flakes away in sheets, windows vanish, boilers crack. These machines were not obsolete when they were abandoned. They were victims of economic miscalculation. Infrastructure is not destroyed by age. It is destroyed by shifts in money, power, and priorities. The desert did not defeat these trains. Financial reality did. And that pattern repeats across continents. After World War II, Soviet leadership ordered construction of a massive railway across Siberian permafrost. It became known as the Salekhard to Igarka Railway. Over 1,000 kilometers were planned. The goal was strategic: strengthen Arctic access, support resource extraction, demonstrate industrial dominance. Construction began in the late 1940s. Much of the labor came from forced prison camps. Thousands worked in brutal Arctic conditions, extreme cold, minimal equipment, unstable terrain, permafrost shifts, ground freezes, thaws, and heaves. Tracks twist, foundations sink. Engineers understood the risks, but political leadership minimized them. Railway beds were laid over ground that literally moves. Bridges sank, embankments fractured. Entire sections required constant repair. The engineering challenge was far greater than planners admitted. And then something changed. In 1953, leadership shifted. Priorities shifted with it. Funding stopped. Political will evaporated. The project was abandoned. Locomotives remained where they stood. Construction equipment rusted into the tundra. Nature began its slow reclamation. Metal contracts in winter and expands in summer. Snow buries tracks. Vegetation creeps forward. This was not simple economic failure. It was ideological overconfidence. A state attempted to command geography. Geography does not negotiate, and it does not compromise. It waits, and eventually it wins. Deep in the woods of Maine, Two full-sized steam locomotives sit where they were parked nearly a century ago. They belong to a short-lived logging railroad built in the 1920s. The railroad was constructed to support timber extraction in a remote region. The plan seemed practical. Cut trees, load trains, transport lumber. Repeat. For a brief period, it worked. But logging operations move, forests thin, markets fluctuate, costs rise. Within a few years, the line failed. And here is the detail that matters most. It cost more to remove the locomotives than they were worth. To extract them required rebuilding track sections or transporting heavy equipment through wilderness. The numbers did not make sense, so they were left. Not because they were useless, because transporting them out no longer justified the expense. There was no dramatic collapse, no political scandal, just arithmetic. Steel engines resting in pine forests. Seasons passed, trees grew taller, metal oxidized. For decades, they have sat in silence. When retrieval cost exceeds asset value, abandonment becomes logical. That equation governs far more infrastructure decisions than most people realize. Sometimes the reason something remains in place is simple. Moving it costs too much. In 1956, a freight train derailed near Whistler, British Columbia. The terrain was challenging. Curves, bridges, mountain grades. Investigations later concluded that speed was likely a factor. The train entered a curve too fast. Cars tipped, steel tore, boxcars plunged into the forest below. It should have been catastrophic. Miraculously, no one died. The wreckage remained scattered along the hillside. Cleanup crews removed what was necessary. What remained was deemed too difficult or too expensive to extract. Over time, the forest grew around it. Moss covered metal. Trees rose through twisted frames. Nature absorbed impact. Today, hikers visit the site. What was once a violent accident now feels serene. This train was not abandoned because of politics or industry collapse. It was abandoned because recovery was not worth the cost. Again, the pattern returns. If removal costs outweigh benefit, nature keeps the machine. Steel loses to moss every time. The Eurostar class. 373 once symbolized European cooperation. When the Channel Tunnel opened in 1994, these high-speed trains became icons. They connected London and Paris in just over 2 hours. They represented technological progress, cross-border collaboration, a new era of mobility. For years, they operated at the forefront of European rail. But technology evolves, efficiency improves, energy consumption decreases, passenger expectations shift. By the mid-2000s, newer models offered better performance. Gradually, the original fleet was withdrawn. Some units were scrapped, some placed into storage. A few sat exposed in open yards. Once symbols of modern achievement, now surplus inventory. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Even cutting-edge technology has an expiration date. The lifespan of relevance is shrinking. A machine that once defined modern transport can become outdated in less than 20 years. Abandonment is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet replacement. No disaster, no collapse, just iteration. Progress creates relics faster than ever before, and relics accumulate. In Leicester, England, scrapyard owner Vic Berry accepted more locomotives than he could dismantle. The demand for scrapping old British rail stock was enormous during the 1970s and 80s. Contracts arrived faster than work could be completed. Space became limited, so he stacked them. Trains piled on trains, carriages balanced above locomotives. Industrial towers formed from steel. It looked surreal, an accidental skyline of dismantled transport history. For a time, it worked. Inventory waited its turn, but backlog grows quietly. Storage becomes liability. Delay compounds. Risk increases. In 1991, a major fire tore through the site. The damage was severe. The business never fully recovered. This is the final pattern: overcommitment, scaling beyond capacity, accepting more than can be processed, assuming future throughput will solve present overload. It rarely does. Infrastructure fails not only when neglected, it fails when overextended. At first glance, abandoned trains look romantic. Rust, graffiti, steel in silence. They photograph beautifully. They invite imagination. But when you trace their histories carefully, a consistent theme emerges: overconfidence, economic contraction, political ambition, technological obsolescence, simple mathematics. Trains are designed to connect cities, to move resources, to generate revenue, to symbolize progress. But the moment they stop being profitable, useful, or strategically valuable, they are reassessed, and sometimes they are left behind, not because people forgot, because someone calculated the cost of recovery and chose not to pay it. Steel does not guarantee permanence. Scale does not guarantee survival. Even the most powerful machines eventually answer to economics, geography, and time. And maybe that is the deeper story, not just about trains, but about systems, about ambition, about the assumption that what we build will always matter. The forests reclaim, the desert corrodes, the tundra shifts, technology advances, and eventually something that once carried thousands of people forward sits still, silent, waiting, not as a mystery, but as a reminder. Nothing built by humans is immune to abandonment, not even steel.